Does my publisher file copyright registration on my behalf? Should I file for copyright if I self-publish? Do I need a trademark? And what's the difference between copyrights and trademarks anyhow? Hi, I'm Ryan, and this is the Nink Channel, where we talk about the craft and business of writing and publishing fiction. And if you're as confused as I am, then this is the video for you. There's been a lot of news lately about AI companies infringing on authors' intellectual property rights, a development that has affected many members of our organization. On today's show, Novelist Inc. member and novelist Aliza Mann interviews author and intellectual property attorney Aliza Rayne. And Lisa is here to walk us through the who, what, and how to protect your intellectual property and published works. Let's dive in. While Novelists Inc., Nink, strives to provide accurate and helpful information, Nink does not assume any liability for or endorse any opinions, advice, instructions, products, errors, or omissions in the following video. Viewers are solely responsible for how they interpret and apply any Nink content.
Hi, welcome. I'm Aliza Mann, and today we'll be talking about copyrights and trademarks and IP with my good friend Lisa Rayne. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Lisa, so many questions about.
Is that so many questions, so little time, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I think, we've all heard some things about AI and how it has affected our work and the things that we need to do to protect ourselves. So today, I'm hoping that you'll help us rein all of that in.
Okay.
Look at that, Lisa Rain. Um, the corniest. So first, tell us what is the difference between a copyright and a trademark? Because I think there's a little confusion there.
Yes.
Mhm.
So copyright protects original works of authorship fixed in a tangible medium of expression. So that comes
Okay.
straight from the law. And what that means is it has to be in some form that someone else can perceive.
Okay.
So if you're writing a book, that means actual words on the page.
Hmm.
Choreographer, that means you put the choreography together and it can be performed on stage where people can look at it.
Hmm.
Movies, right? Film clips. So part of the challenge is people say, well, I'm going to copyright an idea.
Hmm.
Ideas are expressly not protected. And the reason
Okay.
they're not protected is because they're not tangible. They're not in a tangible medium of expression.
Hmm.
So that is a distinction. And then you look at trademarks, and trademarks are really markers of brand and goodwill and source.
Okay.
So think of trademarks for logos,
Okay.
taglines, slogans, those kinds of things. So when we see the swoosh, right,
Hmm.
on a jacket, on a pair of shoes, we know that's Nike. And we expect that if we pick up something with that swoosh on it, it's going to have a certain amount of quality that we associate with the brand Nike.
Okay.
They have trademarked that because when they put it on something, that swoosh indicates source and what you expect from the brand.
Hmm.
It's not a creative written work, right?
Hmm.
And probably a good distinction is when you see something like just do it.
Hmm.
That's their slogan. It's
Right.
trademark because just do it is still indicating the brand. It means the source. It's not copyrighted, it's trademarked. Because short phrases are also not protectable by
Hmm.
copyright. So to get protection for a short phrase, tagline, slogan, it has to have enough brand recognition, source indication to qualify for trademark. And
Okay.
those are the two big distinctions, but I know people tend to use one word when they
And
mean the
mean.
other and vice
Hmm.
versa. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, as someone that's not in the legal space, I'm good for it. I will use one thing and mean the other, and people go, "What exactly are you talking about?" But so, in the Anthropic lawsuit,
Hmm.
we saw them saying if you have not copywritten your novel, you are not included in the lawsuit. And that was heartbreaking for some people who had, volumes and volumes of work and found out that they were not protected for those works. So um, the thought is I'm automatically copywritten. Are we automatically copywritten for our novels?
Yes, you
Okay.
are.
Hmm.
But,
Okay.
and this is the big but, this is the part that people overlook. In the United States, so
Hmm.
for any of the listeners who are abroad, foreign countries outside of, well, foreign to us, those outside the US, there are some different rules. But in the United States, okay, you cannot file for copyright infringement without a copyright registration. You
Okay.
actually need the registration, the certificate to file, right? You
Hmm.
automatically have the rights, but to pursue legal action, you need the registration. In
Okay.
some instances, it may not matter. You have the copyright, you can send a cease and desist letter.
Hmm.
Upstanding people will go, oops, sorry, my bad, back off. Okay.
Right. Right.
The challenge is when you wait, so you can actually go for a long time and then file for the registration right before you sue somebody. So you can do
Hmm.
it later. But there are damages that you can get in the United States if you
Okay.
filed your copyright registration before the incident of infringement happens. There's something called statutory damages. And
Okay.
statutory damages are important is because sometimes people say, well, like pirates, right? They put it on a website, people download it for free, and they're like, I didn't make any money. I was just giving it away for free.
Right.
Then there's no damages supposedly to get, right? But statutory damages say, doesn't matter whether or not you made money for it. If you've
Hmm.
done this thing and we prove you've done this thing, you owe me X number of dollars set by the statute for each act of infringement.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, in the Anthropic settlement, what they did was, in essence, say if you don't have a registration at this point, you're not getting damages in part because you can't really join the suit because you don't have
Hmm.
a copyright certificate.
Right.
Um, and those damages can be anywhere from, a few hundred to several thousand. So base amount, the 3,000, there's
Hmm.
what I think they did was they took sort of like the base statutory damage range and
Okay.
said statutory damages, they're saying they didn't make money, so $3,000 per infringement, right?
Okay. Hmm.
I think what other people have seen, however, is that there are some people saying, don't do that. Like, we should be getting more money and we can do these other things. And that stems from statutory damages have an upper limit that says if you did it intentionally, then you can be charged up to $150,000 per
Hmm.
infringement. So
Okay.
that's why people are
Big
like, three,
difference.
right? That's a big 3,000 because a lot of people think, how do you not have done this intentionally? Come on,
Exactly.
like you knew
Right.
what you were doing. Um, and so for those people who didn't have the copyright registrations filed in the US,
Hmm.
you've now been taken out of this because it's a legal action. And
Right.
there are lots of ways to look at it. I mean, the fact that you could, after the fact, like after the infringement, have filed
Hmm.
for copyright protection, but in essence, since I believe they're using the statutory damage
Hmm. To cover.
markers in order to come up with the amounts to give each author, they just kicked out anybody who didn't have the registration.
Right.
And it
Right. Right.
sucks. Like I know authors who have 40, 50 works in there and half
Hmm.
of them have no copyright
Right.
registrations.
And
So
that's
they're not getting
irregardless.
anything.
Yeah, and that is, for indie and trad,
Yeah.
because some of us found out like they
Yeah.
used our book with our trad publisher, and then that's that. clause in the contract, right? We get into that a little bit later,
Yeah.
on what to look for. So you've already kind of explained how important it is to, or kind of alluded to how important it is. But do you recommend, like, how does an author know, um, which books to register, or is it just all of them?
All of them.
Okay.
All
Mm-hmm.
of them. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm an intellectual property lawyer. Okay. I
Okay.
I went into practice years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Intentionally doing this. I've been fascinated by copyrights and trademarks since before middle school. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
that much of a geek, right? But books, movies, and music were my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my fascination was, woo, they just turned my favorite book into a movie. How's that work? And
Right.
right, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Anthropic case and some of these other AI cases coming up is a perfect example of why you do it all every time,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know when or
Right.
who or how much. And I believe that oftentimes people wait till something happens or until their book blows up. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time you've done that,
It's too
it
late.
may be too late to get someone for statutory damages. It
Yeah.
may be too like you're missing out on things. And they don't cost much. And anymore, everything's online. You
Mm-hmm.
go to the government sites, they walk you through it. You do
Right.
it yourself. Now, granted, sometimes the government explanations of stuff aren't the easiest thing to understand,
Mm-hmm.
but you can get some assistance with that at fairly reasonable rates.
Okay.
So I say try to do it on your own.
Yeah. And is it 75 or 65? Or does it vary for the cost to register?
For just the books, I actually pulled that up and I've shared with you guys, can put it in the notes, the link to the Copyright Office's rate sheet.
Website. Oh,
But it's
perfect.
it's not that much. It's like 50
Yeah.
bucks maybe. It
Yeah.
changes every few years, but it's
Hmm.
it's not that much money at
Okay.
all. And I'm gonna speak to all you people, right? Right. I'm gonna look at
Please.
the area. All you people who say, I don't have the money to do this.
Hmm.
Find the money. No coffee for a month, right? No
Hmm.
eating out for 2 weeks. If you cannot spend less than $100 to protect your work,
Hmm.
then you are not running your author business. And,
Right.
that's part of my niche. Just like there's the creative side of things, and then there's the business side of things. Copyright
Hmm.
is the business side of things because once
Yeah.
somebody takes it, sometimes it's too late to maximize your protection.
Right.
You
Right.
always got opportunities to stop them, but getting damages, get compensation, being parts of these lawsuits, you're missing some opportunities there. So just tighten the belt, skip something, file the
Hmm.
copyright.
Yeah. I mean, it's way less than edits.
Yeah, there we go.
So
Well, and
I'll
this is
add that 50
yeah.
bucks.
Well, and this is what I say too. You always have the choice.
Hmm.
That's my recommendation as both a lawyer and an author,
Hmm.
right? But let's be honest, my first few, I knew how to do it, but I was juggling solo parenting. I had a day job. I was writing books at night. I was chauffeuring kids to athletic events. And it was
Hmm.
like, oh, I need to file my copyright. I need to file my copyright.
Right.
Um, and I didn't. I let it skate on some of my early books and didn't do it right away.
Hmm.
Why? Well, part of me was like, yeah, if they take it, I can live with it because I had a day job, right? I have a day job.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna
Right.
send a cease and desist letter, but I knew what I was giving up.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing I want people to say. If you make the decision, do it intentionally, do it
Right.
consciously, going, I know what I'm giving up if I don't file, and then be okay with it.
Right.
Because the concerns I have are sometimes the empathy I have for people as I see people going, oh, it's so unfair. Like
Right.
just filing the copyright, I shouldn't have had to. Them's the rules. Them's
Right.
the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So either you take advantage of them or you
Mm-hmm.
don't. But when you don't, you can't say it wasn't fair. You got to
Mm-hmm.
follow the rules. And if you don't know the rules, go learn them so that
Right.
you can intentionally follow them or not follow them. Because then you know what you're giving up, you know what you're risking, and then that's your choice.
Right, right. And I feel like I always say we have like a disproportionate number of authors who are also lawyers. So, like it's real it really should be
Yeah.
studied, right? So there is an opportunity to ask your friends and get advice from there, but they also, can pretty like with low barrier to entry hire someone to help them. So it's
Yeah.
to if you don't quite understand, like me, I'm always going to try and hire somebody because I don't
Mhm.
understand,
Yes.
certain things. And on that, like, I know that we've been talking about, the specific novel, but if you have a series, right, like,
Mm-hmm.
what elements of that series or components of your novel, of your world, can be copywritten, or do they even need to be?
Okay, that's a fabulous question because it sort of combines aspects of intellectual property that I think confuse people.
Hmm.
So if you have a book series, right?
Hmm.
As you finish each book, file for copyright registration for that book.
Okay.
Then people often come up with a series name and they go, well, I want to copyright the series name. Okay.
Hmm.
Short phrases aren't copyrightable. Can't do it.
That's
So now
right.
you need to go, does this amount to the level of brand, source, goodwill? Have I used it enough, right, that
Mhm.
I can get trademark registration to designate the product of my books, right?
Okay. Hmm.
So if we think about that level of identity,
Hmm.
you think more like almost like the DC Comics, right? It's like they have copyright in both the comics, they've given rights to motion picture to do the films, but the films are franchise. So they actually have trademarked some of
Okay.
those character names because it's associated with the franchise. And they also do merchandising and they're doing action figures and they're doing, right, those kinds of
Hmm.
things. The challenge with authors and series names, and this is where the lawyers come in. I know y'all don't want to come talk to us, and y'all say we too expensive, but this is where the lawyers come in
Right.
because every series name and how an author uses it doesn't necessarily amount to trademark use.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
also something in trademark law which is called generic names, things that are just considered generic descriptions of what you're doing.
Hmm.
And we're in that age of consumerism and commodification where everybody wants names to describe exactly what you're doing so that everybody
Right.
knows what you're doing. But descriptive names are not protectable,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Also, I write in the romance genre, right? So, in the romance genre, so many of these phraseologies and things have been used by lots of people for so long that most of
Hmm.
our uses of certain aspects of names or titles or what's in our series have been used by
Hmm.
other people. And
Right.
trademark rights would be give you an exclusive. It would give you a monopoly to be the
On that
only
thing.
person to use that phraseology from the
Hmm.
time you filed moving forward. And
Right.
so if other people have been using it, the concept is, well, you can't monopolize that. It's
Right.
not unique enough that when people hear that name, they think only of you, particular author.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
We've seen this happen before
yes.
in grand
Cockygate. I'm
form.
like, if you've been
Yes.
around a while, right? If I remember the Cockygate, I talk about this in one of the presentations I do, right? She
Mhm.
went and filed. First of all, everybody was using cocky. It's romance, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
And she then wanted to go after people who had been using it before she filed the trademark. And that's not how
Hmm.
that works. And that's
Right.
why you need to consult somebody. So even if you get a trademark, you understand what are the limitations, what are the limits
Right.
on what you can protect.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Um, That was an excellent example too. I will never forget it. Um, so we kind of touched on this question already. Like, how do you know when your brand is important enough? So you write a little book, and
Mhm.
then you write a little book about two little hockey players, and then someone slides in your DM and says, "I want to make
Yep.
the movie." So how do you know? I imagine she's probably like, let me look at trademarking a little bit right now, right? So how do you know? Does it need to be on that grand of a scale where it becomes a phenomenon, in order for you to consider trademarking things?
No, actually, it
No.
really doesn't. It really
Okay.
doesn't. You need to be using it as a source,
Mm-hmm.
right? To identify source, building some goodwill, but it needs to be more than just a pen name on a book. And see,
Right.
this is what authors forget. There needs to be some other services,
Mm-hmm.
merchandise, something, education you're
Okay.
doing outside of that, in order for it to work. So, one example I give people, and this is like free tip, go find an author who's doing the thing you're curious about and then go look up their stuff.
Okay.
So, one author who I've followed what she's done from a business standpoint for years, like from the
Mm-hmm.
time I first got in, she's one of the early people I found, is a writer named Marie Force. Okay.
Right.
And if
Right.
you look her up, she has a trademark registration for her
Mm-hmm.
name. But go
Mm-hmm.
to Marie Force's website. She's got the series, she's got not just the books and the audio books, she also does events. She's got all these things she's doing
Mm-hmm.
around her IP, which started as books, and she
Yeah.
built into a business where when she does something, she wants people to know it's coming, it really is coming from me, right?
Right. Right.
And so go look up her trademark registration online and see
Mm-hmm.
what does she
Everything
claim
she's
for her
doing.
goods and services and how does she do that. Those are always examples. There's another author who shall not be named for specific
Yeah,
purpose, but we probably all know who this British author is, right?
we do.
Who has registrations for character names and registrations, but the books went beyond just the books, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
It
And
became a
there are
world.
other things. You do not know when it's going to become a phenomenon. We all hope
Mhm.
we're going to get some male hockey player phenomenon going on for our books.
That's
But
right.
in your world, it just has to be used, right? It has to be used
Hmm.
federally, so across state lines. And in today's digital age, that's easy to do.
Right.
And it's going to designate that source. And a lot of times, figuring out whether or not you amount to that level requires a conversation, unfortunately, with a lawyer. I know we're in the DIY society, but there are
We
some
are.
things you cannot DIY. There are some things that are judgment call analysis that's based on years of experience of looking at examples and filing trademarks and seeing what the trademark office accepts, seeing what the trademark office rejects. Um,
Hmm.
there's some things that you just really need expertise for.
Right.
You can file a trademark on your own. I'm not saying you can't. There's, again, go to the government site. They got
Mhm.
instructions. They walk you through it. It can be done. But then there are things called office actions where they may kick it back and say there's problems with your application because that's where people like me can come
Hmm.
can come in handy.
And help kind of prevent that even
Yeah.
before you get to the trademark office.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I get help with my taxes. So I
Good
help
thing
me.
can be a good thing.
I listen, I do not mess with the IR and the S. So so we talked a lot about what's included, where we're going, what things should be considered, and when to go get legal assistance. But and kind of when an author should start thinking about an IP strategy.
Mm. Hmm.
So tell me about that. Like, when is the best time? And I know, sometimes we're just writing, we're like, this is a little book I'm just going to release. But when do we want to start thinking about that IP strategy to get us to the next level and things like that?
You know, I'm gonna it's funny because I want to say it depends, and I'm
Okay.
laughing because I follow Becca Syme, if anybody knows who she is, and
I
I
do.
laugh because sometimes she says that people are like, "Oh, Becca," But I'm laughing because as a lawyer, we often want to say, "Well, it depends,"
Right.
and I say this because people are different. People are wired different. And
Hmm.
I actually coach entrepreneurs on looking at things like their Clifton strengths and using it for entrepreneurship. There are people who do it for craft and building your author brand, all that. I'm strictly working with entrepreneurs, and most of them are not lawyers, but I think authors, most of them are not authors, but authors need to look at it for their entrepreneurship too.
Right.
There are those who, from the moment they decide, I'm going to write this book and I want to be a bestseller and I want to be right, who are these achievement focused, strategy focused people who, quite honestly, need the plan from the beginning because they're going to work the plan in steps,
Yeah.
right? And think about that. Um, I start every coaching session with saying, why do you want to do whatever it is you just told me you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Because knowing why you want to do it, it will
Matters.
help direct how you do it and in what order you do certain steps. But
Okay.
there are a lot of people who just are creative and say, I have this story idea, I have this book in me, and I want to get this book out.
Hmm. Hmm.
Your first job is to get the book out.
That's right.
Right? Get the book
Yeah.
out, get it done,
Yeah.
get it out in the world. Decide
Hmm.
if you're going to do another one. Because some people only got the one book in them. If
True.
you're going to be a one book, unless it
Hmm.
becomes a phenom, then all this other strategy, it
Is
doesn't matter. Getting
useless.
bogged down in business and strat doesn't matter. Maybe
Right.
you write the one book and then you decide, I'm not even sure this is a genre I want to write in. So there are people who are in that early business stage. What we call on the business side, the product and development stage, right? You're gonna write in a
Hmm.
few genres, you're gonna try a couple of ways to write, right? You're still figuring out business strategy is not a priority for you right now. It really
Hmm.
isn't.
Right.
You're still figuring out your product and stuff. But once you get to the next level, the next phase of authorship, about phase two-ish, and you've got some understanding of what your product's going to be and how you are going to go about this and what you're going to write next, you probably are, it's time to start thinking about what level of strategy do I want? What level of business am I
Hmm.
building here?
Right.
Um, and I think that becomes really, really important. But it's never too late. Like,
Right. Correct.
you 100 books in, you've been trad and now you want to go indie. You've been indie, you think you want to go trad. Like now you're like, I gotta figure this out, right?
Hmm.
You've been in KU, you want to go wide, whatever. All of that is part of a
Hmm.
business strategy. And doing it ad hoc can often take you longer to hit a profit margin, to hit some sense of profit, or understand whether or not you're making a profit. Because there's people out there, right, publishing, collecting the money. They don't know whether they in the hole or they made
Right.
profit. They don't have no tracking sheet. They don't know what. It's always important to then look at a strategy. But
Yeah.
I'd say look at your personality, your talents, your strength, where you are. But anyone who's a phase two or beyond in their business probably needs to be thinking about strategy in some form or another.
Hmm. Even if that's just marketing and not
Yeah.
specifically,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we can't just be out here floating.
Right. Out here floating, not
I
knowing your
tried
numbers, like,
it.
come on, people.
Yeah, yeah. It is a business, everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, if you want to make money,
Yes.
if you one of those people who like, I write because I love to write and I got to get the story out. I don't care if people buy my books or not. Then ignore
Hmm.
everything I'm talking about because this advice is not for you. But if you
Right.
like, I'm doing this and I love to write stories, but I'd also like to make money off of it, then
Right.
yeah, you've got to key into some business strategy
Absolutely.
at some
Never too
point.
early, never too late.
Yeah.
I like that. A minute, and I think we've been talking about a lot about folks, indie authors,
Hmm.
but it is important for you to kind of know what your protections are. I mean, I feel like even more so when you're partnering with a publisher. So I get the contract, and let's just, take it back to, you know, first contract me, and I was like, signed, that is never a good
Yes.
idea,
Yes.
people.
No. No.
Please don't do that. But what do we want to look for in those contracts? They are daunting. Sometimes they're, 10 pages, 20 pages, and you're like, where do I start? Hopefully you have an agent, but if you don't, what parts should you pay attention to? What clauses, as it pertains to rights and rights management?
Oh boy.
I
Okay.
know it. I know it. It's a biggie.
Yeah. Well, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, that's why we're here, but the paragraph that talks about rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
What rights are you giving them? What rights are you keeping?
Mm-hmm.
Terms and for how long?
Right.
Okay. Those are always very, very key because those determine when that contract may come up for those works,
Mm-hmm.
when you can ask for them back, if you can ask for them back, right? Things like that. And that last thing I talked about, asking for them back, is reversion. So
Yeah.
somewhere in there should be a clause that says how you can get the rights you've given in this contract back, under what circumstances and at what time period. Having those two clauses, not just in there, but in language you understand, is key. Because I have, this has come up so much. I'm like, if I get another contract, that some author has signed with somebody who called themselves a publisher, that don't have half the stuff, like half of them don't have a reversion clause. They
Mm-hmm.
now have, they on the paper have it in perpetuity.
Lord
Like,
have mercy.
no, no, that should not exist. The
Mm-hmm.
other things to think about is what triggers termination. So not just reversion, but
Mm-hmm.
in what instance can you claim the contract has been breached, or something that you were required to come to agreement on and you didn't come to an agreement on? At what
Mm-hmm.
time can you then say, no, I'm going to now ask to terminate the contract and we're done?
Right.
What I'm finding is people go straight to the royalties,
Mm-hmm.
and if the money looks good, they don't think about anything else.
Yeah,
The money's important. Don't get me wrong.
it
The
is.
royalties, the money's important. If you have an agent, they should be able to negotiate that for you. If you don't, you need to find people who've been with this publisher before, who are willing to tell you what their royalties are,
Right.
so that you can ask for the right money. But giving away your rights, and most of these are like distribution. We've got the right to distribute the books, what formats: paperback, ebook,
Mm-hmm.
what audiobook, right? Understand, I think some people don't understand those are three separate rights. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually give somebody just the paperback distribution rights and keep ebook and audiobook, or give somebody
Mm-hmm.
paperback and somebody audiobook and you keep the ebook. Like, these are all
Right.
separate rights, and so you need to understand that you have those separate rights, and then understand what you're giving away to whom and what you're getting in return. What
Right.
you're getting in return. Because let's go back to the Anthropic case, because this is something that really kind of pisses me off as
Okay.
a lawyer.
Yeah.
A lot of contracts say we have the right to file the copyright application, copyright registration in the name
Mm-hmm.
of the author. And what we found out is they had the right, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
But I have the right and I will.
Mm-hmm.
I have the obligation under the terms of this I am obligated to file the copyright. That's two different sets of languages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They had the obligation to do it and they failed to do it, and you just missed out on some money on this settlement. Look, I say consult a lawyer, but if I had clients in that situation, I'm thinking somebody owes you some money, right? Because they just
Mm-hmm.
lost you something by failing to follow the
Just do the
contract.
thing.
But to have the right to do something is not the obligation. And there
Right.
are a lot of contracts out there who say we have the right to do something. You want in certain situations, and depending on what they're doing, you want them to have the obligation to do it, or you want the right to go behind them and do it yourself.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the advice, right? So if you
Yeah.
see may not or may
May.
file for,
Yeah.
that may is big and you'll want to follow up on that. Like, what do
Yeah.
you say to the publisher and what time frame? Like, the book is set to come out and it's been a
Yeah.
month and it hasn't happened yet. What do you say
You
to the
know,
publisher?
I think most publishers who have the proper administration and are doing their job get this done within the first 3 months.
Okay.
But within the first 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
I feel you have the right to go, has the copyright
Okay.
application been filed?
Mm-hmm.
Because once you go past 6 months, we all know how publishers are with releases. They on to the next book.
Yeah.
Nobody's thinking about your release anymore, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
gone to that trad window. They're on to the next thing. So somewhere between 3 and 6 months, you should be looking for that. And here's the thing that I think most people didn't realize, but now they know because of Anthropic. You can look that stuff up online,
Right.
right?
Right.
Copyright registration database is free to look at online.
Mm-hmm.
So after a couple months, go look.
Yeah, for
Be like, I
sure.
don't see an application in there for my book, and y'all supposed to do the copyright. When's that getting filed?
Yeah.
Better yet, I've asked for this from the few chat publishers I've worked with. Like, when you file it, can you send me a copy to let me
Mm-hmm.
know it's been filed? That way I
Right.
don't have to worry about it, right? I,
Mm-hmm.
everybody will agree. I think personally, that's just low, like communication with your authors. That's low hanging fruit. Voila, this has
Right.
just been filed in the copyright office. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if not, go
Appreciate
look it
it.
up. Go look it up.
Yeah.
If you're at
Yeah.
6 months and you don't see it in there,
Go
you need to
get
start
it.
asking. You
Yep.
need to start asking. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense because I think that happened for a couple of publishers and authors, and they're like, of course, because you see in your book that little copyright symbol and a date, and you're like, they absolutely did.
No,
So,
because the copyright symbol and the date goes on there from the moment
mhm,
you've written the book because you have copyright protection.
right,
Right? That does
right,
not indicate that there's been an application filed with the Copyright Office and the registration issues. The two have
hmm
nothing to do with each other. It's not like trademarks, and maybe we should put
hmm
that in. In trademarks, you know whether something is common law trademark or registered because it'll have TM after it, which means I'm using it as a trademark. And you do
uh-huh,
have rights there. They're common law rights, but that means I need to let you know I'm using this as a trademark for this goods or services. But then there's the R in the circle. You can
yeah,
only use the R in a circle if you actually have a federal trademark registration. And so you can look at trademarks and tell what's common
hmm
law, what's registered,
hmm
if they're
hmm
using their symbols. And you should be using your symbols, people. I'm gonna say, use your symbols. But with copyright, you get to put that C in a circle and the date on it from the
because you actually
moment
have it.
you create the work.
Right, right.
That does not give you the federal protections you need in order to file suits and do all that stuff in the US.
Good to know, my friend,
Yeah.
because I have made some mistakes. I have seen some things. So we talked a lot about all of these things.
Okay.
And you warned me beforehand that this might be a longer question. But when we are setting up our author business, and I'm just rephrasing it to make it a little bit more compact, when you're doing things like that, if you have an LLC, are you filing in the name of the author? Are you filing in the name of the LLC when you
Hmm.
file it? And that's
Um,
specifically for like indie authors too.
there are different strategies for
Okay.
that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're filing as yourself, as the author,
Mm-hmm.
you can file it under your government name, right? Or you could file it as a pen name without putting your government name on there. So if you're somebody who's using a pen name because you're trying to be super secret and you don't ever want
Mm-hmm.
anybody to know your government name, you can actually just file it under a pen name.
Okay.
Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is, if you file it under a pen name without putting your government name on there too, there's
Mm-hmm.
a different term of copyright protection, right?
Okay.
So basic is
Mm-hmm.
life of the author plus 70 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
An anonymous work, these things begin to change.
Okay.
Um, Also, copyright duration for a company is different than an individual. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you want to look at is how long do you want copyright protection and what's the strategy?
Okay.
So, interestingly enough, putting it in the name of the LLC can ultimately make the copyright term shorter, depending on how old you are as a person and how long you live.
Mm-hmm.
Because, right, if I
Mm-hmm.
write a book, now and I'm in my 30s, 40s, and I
Mm-hmm.
live to be 95,
Mm-hmm.
there's another 70 years
That
after
people
I'm
enjoy
gone that
royalties.
my estate and my heirs have copyright protection for this. You're looking at
Okay.
about, 100 years or so. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if it is a corporate entity that owns it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're 20, you're 30, heck, if you're 40, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you file it in your LLC's name
Mm-hmm.
and you live to be 95,
Right.
there is not another 70 years left on the
The
copyright
business is
term.
gone.
But again, that comes back to business strategy
Right.
because one of the things that I'm seeing now as I'm beginning to shift from entrepreneurs of all kinds to author specifically, because I feel like the author community needs this business advice now more than ever. They
Great.
need the business advice, is that you also want a succession plan, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Are you putting your copyrights into trust? If you're going to be a career author, you're planning to write 5, 6, 10, 20, 100 books.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to that intellectual property if something happens to you? Who gets
Right.
it? Do you have children? Do you have heirs? How do we want this to progress moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting that there was a lot of talk online about Quincy Jones's estate after he passed and how he set up his estate and his trust to make sure children had control of certain aspects of his business. Now, are a lot of us going to end up having Quincy Jones type IP left as a legacy? Maybe not. But
Right.
those are valuable assets if you have a lot of books out
Books
there.
out there. Yeah.
So, talking to an estate planner, somebody can do trust in estates, figuring that out, because in that situation, the length and the term of copyright you want will matter depending on
Mm-hmm.
what that strategy is. So, that's another place where business strategy becomes important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't set up LLCs in the beginning, my suggestion personally is just file it in your
Mm-hmm.
name, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you write under a pen name, I would put that you write under a pen name, but put your government name on there.
Yeah.
Unless you're seriously, seriously trying to be super secret and nobody knows your name,
Mm-hmm.
consider that. And I do that because in this day and age, right? in the
Hmm.
online sphere and the database sphere, and these companies out there who basically have invaded all of our privacy, and they scan all everything we have on our computer, everything we have on our phone. uh
Yeah.
it's hard to keep that name secret forever. Like, somebody gonna find out.
Yes.
Somebody gonna find out. So you might as well get maximum protection. But if you
Right.
still are in that phase, right, where I believe I don't want anybody to know, you can file a copyright registration without putting your government name on it. Just know it
Mhm.
changes the duration of the copyright.
Yeah. I imagine it would be hard to prove too. Like if I use my pen name, all my ID and everything is in my government name, right? So if I had to prove who I am, I'm going to have to use something other than government issued information.
Yeah.
That's probably a reach, but I have to go down that path.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, thank you for that. I appreciated this because I can never learn enough about protecting myself and protecting my
Yeah.
business. So I thank you so much for that. And I've heard you speak on this 100 times. And folks, we could have probably went on another 2 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot. But you can always reach out to Lisa. And she will come to your groups and all of those types of things, or she'll give you individual legal advice for through her legal services. So, Lisa, what's next for you? Let's talk about it.
Okay. I'm excited to talk about this only because depending on when they look at this, we've just finished the Winter Olympics. I'm an
Yes.
ice skating person, right? My sport in the Winter Olympics is figure skating, ice dancing. So next for me is a ice skating book I call Ice Matched, and it's the story of a shrewish Canadian ice dancer guy who basically has alienated the Canadian ice dancing space and even their Olympic committee, and realizes he's not going back to the Olympics with Canada. But his mom is US born. So he decides, okay, I'll go with the US. I'm going back to the Olympics one way or the other. But don't nobody want to
Right.
skate with him. So he's paired with an American figure skater who's dance challenged, and it's about their relationship and how they try to make it back to the Olympics while basically not liking each other. So, of
Of course, they don't like each
course,
other.
they don't like each other. So, I tell people, think the cutting edge meets strictly ballrooms, and if you're of
I
a certain
love that.
generation, that kind of lets you know where we're headed with
Exactly
this.
that.
Yeah,
Very nice. I can't wait. Personally, I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited. We did include the beautiful cover. Oh my God, it was breathtaking. And folks, if you want to grab that, links are and information are available in the down below in the comments. Thank you so much again, Lisa. It was fascinating as usual, and I appreciate the time. And thank you for all of those watching, whenever you watch, for joining us during this conversation.
thank you. It was great
Uh,
to be here.
it was.
Well, that interview really helped clarify some things for me. If you found it helpful too, then please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That helps us get this information in front of more writers out there who need it. Until next time, this is Ryan at Novelist Inc., signing off.